You're listening to the audio-only version of Cocktails with Cav, the popular video cast streamed live only on X. Follow us here on Spotify or on X at Cav Literature.
Oh, happy hump day, everybody. Oh, you have got to stick around. We have a great show for you tonight. This author's fun, engaging, great new work. You're definitely going to want to stick around. As always, hit that follow, like the stream. Oh, hit the notification bell so you never miss a great Cocktails with Cav episode where we bring you incredible indie creators. Well, let's do a little quick bit of housekeeping. It's been a heck of a week. I tell you what, just look, check the descriptions. Consider supporting the show so we can keep bringing you these incredible authors, entertainers, and artists. Cheap cup of coffee is all it takes at our Buy Me a Coffee link. And as always, hey, check out our merch page. We have some great swag and we're adding more every day. So check out our merch page and consider supporting the show that way. It's a great way to support the show and get some of that great swag for yourself. Well, come on, enough of all of that. We've had such an eventful month traveling. Oh, we had to get our shows out going. So let's do it. Please help me welcome to the stage the incredible horror crime hybrid author, Peter O'Keefe. Oh, Peter, my friend, I'm so glad you could finally make it on Cocktails with Cav, my buddy. How you doing up there in Detroit, man?
Actually, I'm in Racine, Wisconsin these days.
Oh, are you?
Yep. I've been moving around my first 3 decades in Detroit and New York City, Los Angeles, South Bend, Indiana, and now Racine, Wisconsin.
Oh, so you went from cars to cheese. You're all about it, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. Too much cheese. Yeah.
Too much cheese. Well, man, I'm so glad you could finally join us. But I have my cocktail ready.
I'm ready. Got my dirty bastard.
Oh, that
my Founders. Yeah.
Oh, you can't go wrong. I'll tell you, it's like 95 degrees wet wool blanket with humidity up here and here in New Orleans. So I'm cooling off. I'm sticking to a little crisp gin tonight, you know. One of these days I'll pick up Hendrix as a sponsor, but
that would be nice.
That's right.
All your guests could get a bottle.
Oh, it's pleasant. Feel free to sponsor Hendrix. It's a free plug. No. But yeah, Pete, I'm glad you came on. You have a great new work that just was released June 3rd. And man, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But we, of course, love the audience to get to know the creators, hopefully build that relationship a little. They can fall in love with you, Peter, and, that would buy your work. But we just, I tell you what, we have just a hard road to hoe, obviously, as indie creators. So please let everybody know about yourself, and before we get to talking about this great piece of work you got.
Well, I'm originally from Detroit. Lived the first 3 decades of my life there. Most of my writing is based on those years, on those experiences. I've since moved around a lot. I lived in New York City and Los Angeles and South Bend, Indiana, and now Racine, Wisconsin, kind of back in the Rust Belt. And I've also moved around a lot in terms of making a living. My first paid writing gig was writing for this horror TV show, Tales from the Dark Side. And from that, I sold some screenplays. I worked, did some scripts for Hollywood studios. I optioned a bunch of screenplays. I went on from there. I was a copywriter. I did commercials. I did marketing videos. I made some short films. I made documentaries. Made a documentary that won an Emmy about artists in the Midwest.
Oh, nice.
In between, the writer's life, I've been a bartender and worked on loading docks and night janitor in an apartment store, road crew, you name it, I've done it. Insurance company. And after all that, I just decided, I basically retired from making money and started writing full time, writing short stories and writing novels. And Counted with the Dead is the first one that's been picked up by a small press, Grendel Press. And, it's been exciting. It's been fun.
I definitely understand the genre you wrote in, Tales from the Dark Side. That was, I think a lot of people probably familiar with that,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, back in the day. So,
have you always been, just kind of interested in that genre, the dark horror and, that kind of thing?
I've really bounced around. I guess I've got a perpetual short attention span. I wrote for Tales from the Dark Side. I did write some horror screenplays that never got made. I wrote some short stories, but I also wrote a lot of other stuff, crime stuff. And then, like I said, I had jobs as copywriter and commercial writer, director, and things where, of course, I had to do what the clients wanted. And I always, the novel is based on a screenplay I wrote many years ago, which basically got me out to LA, got me a lot of meetings, got optioned 8 or 10 times, but never got made. Got me writing assignments, I was able to meet people. And at the end of the day, I think I'm glad that happened, because I think it really needed to be a novel. But
right.
I always felt, I never felt confident enough about myself to be a novelist for some reason. And I never felt this kind of material was, it's very dark, very violent, horror crime set in Detroit. But then I started following writers like Gabino Iglesias, The Devil Takes You Home, and Laird Barron, and I was like, oh, you can tell stories like that and sell them as novels. And so I sat down and wrote Counted with the Dead. And it's a very dark, very violent story. I have a content warning in the book, that says bad things happen to good people, good dogs, and innocent children in this book. So be warned.
That's it. And do you find, I know, because, one of the projects, obviously, have a lot of irons in the fire, but one of the projects I have, of course, is working on a novelization of a screenplay I had in the can. And did you find that helped in your novelization? Especially because screenwriting's, it's more succinct and, city, street, night, but expand that,
I mean, the good thing was I was already writing short stories, so I already had a little bit of that. And strangely enough, writing industrials, directed and wrote a lot of industrials for, shooting in factories and shooting assembly lines, and then describing, that doing that sort of description, really kind of honed my skills at describing things. And, screenplays are, like you said, it's like exterior night, side street. And so it was a transition, to learn, how to go beyond that and really describe the setting. But at the same time, screenplays were a good training, because you really learn how to write dialogue, because they're driven by dialogue.
I was going to say that helped me immensely, because I've always had a problem.
Yeah. And you also, since you're writing for film, you really have to be aware of moving a character around a room, moving a character in space in a screenplay. And so that was helpful, writing a novel. It was like, okay, the character is here, and then he's going to move over here, and I need to describe that. And the setting, the setting was Detroit in the 90s, which was a very different place than it is now. It's very much been revitalized, but there were whole square blocks of abandoned skyscrapers, and enormous abandoned auto plants, and an enormous abandoned train station. So the setting was just so evocative. It was actually fun to write, because I'd been in a lot of those places, and it was like walking through some ancient ruins or something when you're in these spaces. So that writing about that became kind of fun, and I actually had to kind of curb myself, because I got so carried away with describing every foot, every room in these spaces, that when I had the amazing good luck of being able to get Gabino Iglesias, very successful horror writer, as my editor, and he basically cut out 10,000 words of description,
right,
from the book, which made it much better. But there's still a lot of description in it, So,
yeah, I'll tell you, the horror that was Detroit. It sounds like a great horror location. and
I want to say, because I don't want to piss off my fellow Detroiters, that there's all kinds of settings in this book of abandoned hotels and office buildings and factories. Almost every single one in this book has since been revitalized and brought back to its original glory, basically.
Well, that's good, because
so I don't feel too bad about that. This is part of Detroit's past that the city has overcome.
Well, that's good. That is definitely good. Well, I tell you what, all this darkness and horror and crime, buddy, I'm gonna have to refill my cocktail so you can tell us all about this. Yeah, that's it. And tell us all about the story. We just take a little quick break, but man, when we get back, let's go ahead and we'll talk about your great work, Counted with the Dead. All right, ladies and gentlemen, a quick mid-roll break real fast to give ourselves a plug. Look, if you haven't had a chance to go and check us out at rumble.com/afterhourslive, please do so. Great show. After Hours Live is where producer Drunk Doug and Brian, who's always on fire, but we have a great time with some cocktails, unwinding and discussing the hot topics and news. And it's just a lot of fun. You can even call in and be part of the show. So please go check us out and give us a follow on rumble.com/afterhourslive. Oh, Peter, thanks for hanging with me through the break, buddy. I like I said, it's so hot and humid here all the time. I have to keep refilled. This job's going to turn me into an alcoholic, buddy.
Hey, you got to keep hydrated there.
But man, I tell you what, just like we were talking about right before the little break, man, you have your great work that just came out June 3rd, Counted with the Dead. And I tell you what, horror, crime, great descriptions like you talked about just before the break of some of the locales. Why don't you tell us about the story, man, and get us hyped up about it?
Well, the story is basically a reformed hitman who wants to quit killing, and wants to somehow earn some sort of redemption for all the terrible things he's done in his life. And then he discovers it's not going to be so easy, because some crazed scientist has been retrieving the bodies of his victims and has turned them into this Frankenstein monster, basically animated by the now deranged brain of his final victim. So he's got to find a way to, not only earn some sort of forgiveness, absolution for all the things he's done in his life. He's got to now protect his family and his friends from this creature that's coming after him and everyone dear to him, looking for revenge. And it's the perfect setting. He has to track this creature down in a city that has lost 700,000 or 800,000 in population in the last couple of decades. So it's filled with abandoned buildings for this creature to hide. So that's where most of the action takes place.
Well, I tell you that, golly, the story sounds fascinating. And you know, one of the things I love about the genre, I'm a huge fan of that character development, that analysis into the depths, you know, of the darkness, that dark side of people and humanity. You know, I imagine some of your past work kind of informs some of that character development too, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it was really nice writing the novel version of the screenplay, because you everything's not carried by a few lines of dialogue. You can really get inside people's minds, and you know, and so the characterizations, you know, came from, you know, the years I lived in Detroit, people I knew, stories I heard. When I was 20 years old, 2021, my roommate was an ex-Detroit cop in his 30s, and so all his buddies who were still on the force would come by, and we'd party and drink flaming ouzo shots and smoke dope, and those guys always had the best dope. And so I just, you know, heard so many stories. And then I was a bartender in several different places. You know, like I said before, I worked on loading docks. You know, I had all kinds of jobs, and you know, lived in a lot of sketchy neighborhoods, and just the stories and the people I met. For so long, I wanted to tell those stories, and that's kind of why I kind of lost my interest in screenplays, because you couldn't tell those stories. And I'd even hear from people, you know, oh, we like this screenplay, but it's too urban, or it's set in Detroit, and we don't care about this place. We don't care about these people. And so I was like, no, I really want to tell their stories. You know, so I sat down and turned that original screenplay into a novel, and I'm pretty happy with it.
No, that's awesome. And do you find that you know, for the characters in the book, you know, the reformed hitman and the mad scientist guy, you know, did you find yourself interplaying a lot between their similarities to help solve the problem versus their differences, or
well,
that kind of psychological dive, you know?
I mean, my main point of entry for the characters, I wrote the screenplay originally during a very, very dark time in my life. I was one of 8 kids. One of my older brothers, 13 months older than me, we both lived in New York City at the time. We'd been very close our entire lives. He was the closest in the family to me, and we had a falling out. We didn't speak for months. You know, I don't even remember what it was. And then he calls me up, and I heard his voice on the answering machine, and he sounded so distraught. I picked it up, and it turned out, you know, he had AIDS and he was dying. And so we kind of reconnected, and that's the same time I was writing the screenplay. And I'd had this idea, you know, I grew up Catholic, you know, educated by nuns and priests all the way through high school. And I'm a fallen away Catholic, but you know, it sticks with you. And I was just always thinking, you know, boy, you'd sit in this little confessional booth and you tell this priest what you did wrong, and he'd, you know, 3 Hail Marys, 3 Our Fathers, and you're forgiven. And I started thinking, well, how bad can you be? Can you kill someone and go to confession and be forgiven? Can you kill 10 people and go to confession and be forgiven? And that's where the original idea came from. And then, you know, since it was, you know, I just threw myself into it, you know, because of what I was dealing with my brother. And it went very dark. It went Frankenstein, you know, which was always one of my favorite books. You know, what happens if he's looking for forgiveness, for absolution, but then he's literally confronted by his past deeds, you know, in the form of this monster. And, you know, so that's kind of where that came from. And so the two brothers were my kind of entry into the story. And it was interesting. When I was out in LA, a very smart producer that read it, I always just thought of it as this hitman versus monster screenplay. And he reads it, he looks at me and he goes, this screenplay is really about two brothers. And I'd never really thought about it that way. It just kind of ended up, just came out in the writing because that's where my head was at. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It is about two brothers, and one of them's even gay, although my brother was nothing like Marty in the book.
Right. Well, I tell you what, that is, it's like a scoop on Cocktails with Cav, buddy. Yeah, it got your work just came out June 3rd, but that's a fascinating impetus for the story and what drives it. And, I'm sure the readers will connect with that darkness that it goes through. Yeah. But it's fascinating. But man, I'll tell you what, Peter, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your schedule to come on the show with us, bud. It's so looking forward to your great success with this work. And ladies and gentlemen, if you hadn't gotten a chance to know Peter, please look, his X handles right there under his video for you. Please go give him a follow. Great fun. Knows how to drink.
Can I speak in a little promo here?
Oh, absolutely.
On the same day my novel came out, an anthology called Bishop Ryder Lives from Down and Out Books came out, and my story, by their works you'll know them. It's a crime anthology, but it's got people like S.A. Cosby in it, so I felt like I was moving up from the minor leagues to the big leagues with people like that. So another one to go look for. Bishop Ryder Lives.
Oh, well, that's it. Well, I'll tell you what, Peter, plug everything you can, but it definitely seems like you're headed for some great success. And ladies and gentlemen, like I said, give Peter a follow. Great guy to chat with, fun guy. And by all means, look, please check out his new work that was just released June 3rd, Counted with the Dead. Available at all your fine retail outlets where you get your reading materials from. But of course, Peter's links will be right in the description of the show for you as well. So by all means, go check them out. Peter, my friend, again, I know I said it a couple of times, but just real appreciative you took time out your day to come on the show, bud.
Oh, I'm just so happy you invited me. This was great. I had a great time.
Oh, definitely, man. Well, cheers from New Orleans and Racine, Wisconsin, buddy.
All right. Good talking to you.
You too, Pete.